Welcome to the debut episode of Sports Talk with the Statsman. I'm Paul Bruno, and I've spent my whole life talking about sports on many platforms for other organizations where I'm known as the Statsman. On today's episode, I want to talk about a couple of topics that revolve around Toronto's sports teams. First off, Auston Matthews and the Maple Leafs have finally agreed on a 4-year extension with an AAV of $13.25 million per year. That's the richest contract in terms of the average annual value in NHL history, folks. It comes at a time when the NHL salary cap is finally also expected to rise significantly and steadily going forward, and that's a very key point where I'd like to start the analysis. For the past few years, the Leafs have been maligned for committing almost 50% of their cap to 4 players, and that's allowed them very little wiggle room in terms of building a team around them. And these deals were agreed to at a time when the cap was expected to rise steadily, but we all know that that hasn't been the case in the last few years, and that's why they've been criticized for those deals. To drill down into the Matthews situation a little deeper, the largest commitment the Leafs could have made on this deal was in the order of $16.5 million, which represents 20% of the cap maximum of $82.5 million that each team can spend. Instead, his $13.25 million has left some money on the table. It only represents 16% of the current salary cap, and as I said, it's going to go up significantly next year, so that percentage will drop, and it will drop continually as the salary cap rises. For instance, when the salary cap reaches $90 million, likely in the next couple of years, his salary will eat up 14.7%. So you can see it's going to get better the longer we go into the deal. This also debunks a couple of other notions, friends. He did not hold the club for ransom and indeed left some money on the table. He wants a contending team to be built around him, and he wants to win the Stanley Cup here in Toronto. That point is clear. It also should make people realize that he doesn't want to run away to Arizona. He wants to stay here. He's committed 12 years of his career to Toronto, so let's put that stuff to rest. He is now in a position where he is clearly one of the top players in the NHL and should be for the foreseeable future. When he's all said and done in Toronto, he's going to be the club's highest goal scorer in history. And sure, the playoff success hasn't come yet, but there are a couple of other stars, many in fact, who have taken the same track to their ultimate success, and I think he's going to follow suit. I'm happy with this deal, folks, and all Leafs fans should be, in my opinion, too. Now let's turn our attention to the 2023 edition of the Toronto Blue Jays. This is a team that was really hyped at the beginning of the season. It was supposed to be a top offensive club with a pretty good pitching staff and pretty solid defense. In fact, a definite playoff contender. They added the likes of Dalton Varsho, Brandon Belt, and Kevin Kiermaier to a lineup that already included Bichette, Guerrero, and Springer. On the mound, they added Chris Bassett and Eric Swanson to the pitching staff, so that looks like a number of solid additions to a pretty good core. Let's begin by taking a look at the pitching staff, where you can point to 4 starters who are having great seasons. This club ranks as the lowest club in ERA, and they also have a whip that ranks 7th in the entire major leagues, thanks to starters Berrios, Gossman, Bassett, and Kikuchi enjoying solid seasons. On the downside, last year's phenom Alek Manoah has lost his way and is now trying to sort himself out in Buffalo at AAA, but nowhere near what he was performing at last year's levels. I can't remember a deeper bullpen since the World Series years, folks. This team can run out 5 or 6 guys from the pen every night that are quality relievers and 2 definite closers at the back end, punctuated by Jordan Romano, who's having an all-star caliber season. I can't remember a deeper bullpen, in fact, since the World Series years. The team's defense has been greatly improved with the additions of Varsho and Kiermaier in the outfield. In fact, they lead the major leagues in defensive runs saved, so that's a quantum leap from the spotty defense that they showed last year at that position. And then Bichette, for his part, has really cut down on his error rate in the infield, really being stellar at the shortstop position. It's the offense that's not been up to snuff. They're among the worst hitters in terms of runners in scoring position, one of the lowest batting averages in the history of the club, and certainly at the lower end of the standings this year in that category. They have 6 players who have already or will shortly strike out 100 times this year. That's a lot of swing and miss in a lineup that was supposed to be able to put the ball in play much more consistently. And that's really been the nub of the issue. For all the veteran names in this lineup, no one has even reached the 20 homer mark, and that's a disappointment too, considering they hit in a pretty hitter-friendly park here in Toronto. The likes of Bichette, Guerrero, Springer, and Varsho have been wanting in that specific statistic. This is the part that got the team on the outside of the playoff picture as I spent my time talking to you today. To me, there doesn't seem to be a plan when this team comes to the plate. They need to put more balls in play. It's really that simple. Their situational hitting is very poor and too much swing and miss. And I think there's a little bit of me first that comes into play here. These guys are swinging for the fences too much when simply putting the ball in play and looking for holes in the defense might be the better course of action. Unless they resolve their hitting woes, this sputtering offense is going to be the reason why the team doesn't make the postseason. As a fan, I hope they get it right. So that's the end of the first episode of Sports Talk with the Statsman, folks. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this channel and tell your friends about me. I'm Paul Bruno. You can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, as the Statsman at Statsman22. Thanks for tuning in. See you again next time.